Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive! This week, I continue my series on Changing the Dreaming by talking about the systems and mechanics. Now, this is, of course, a White Wolf system, so it uses the same basic system as most other storyteller games, namely the storyteller system. Where it actually works out a little differently is in the mechanics and the abilities specific to changelings. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we talk about the mechanics of Changeling the Dreaming. Let's start with a quick refresher on the White Wolf Storyteller system. It is a skill plus attribute based system. You roll skill then attribute in terms of d10s. Each d10 that succeeds is determined, of course, by a target number, but each d10 that rolls above that target number is a success. If you roll ones and no successes, that is called a botch. That's when bad things happen. The White Wolf system was at least nice enough that they didn't give you the old you can succeed horribly type result. It's you succeed, you fail, or you fail horribly. I.e. success, failure, botch. But that is the core of the system. That has remained unchanged pretty much forever. Now, different systems approach it a little bit differently, different iterations, but 10s in your specialties count as 2 successes. The 20th anniversary versions did away with the old 10s exploding. So you can't get ridiculously insane successes anymore. But that is, as I said, the core of the system. Now, Changeling approaches things a little differently in certain areas. Namely, whenever you are doing any test involving glamour or your fairy arts, you have a special set of dice that you keep separate from the rest. These replace dice in your normal pool. These are called the nightmare dice. Basically, what nightmare represents is the dreaming is not the real world. And when you deal with the dreaming enough, can kind of go insane in a state called bedlam, where you are disconnected from the mortal world and are dealing purely with the chimerical dreaming. And nightmare represents that unhingedness. And what basically happens is you accrue nightmare rating. When your nightmare rating hits 10, your last willpower point, gets marked, and whenever you spend that causes a bedlam threshold. But how do you accrue nightmare points? That's what the nightmare dice are. What happens is, whenever you roll for any of your changeling abilities, you replace a certain number of dice equal to your nightmare rating with nightmare dice. These dice are rolled, for all intents and purposes, like the rest of your dice pool. But every 10 you roll on them, adds to your nightmare rating. And that ultimately is how you build up nightmare. Well, one of the ways. Also, whenever you unleash an art, you build up a point of nightmare. But that is the core systems of Changeling. I'm not really going to be talking about character creation this time, because character creation really is the same for most of the World of Darkness lines. But what I am going to talk about is Faerie Magic. Changeling magic is done through a process called Cantrips. What Cantrips are is they are a art plus a realm. The arts tell you what you can do, realms tell you what you can affect. There are 4 main realms: actor, fae, nature, or prop. Actor affects people, mundane autumn people. Fae affects anything relating to the dreaming. 1 dot affects commoners, 2 dots affect mortal. Beyond that, you start getting into different types of chimerical beings. Nature affects things as part of the natural world. Prop affects things that were manufactured. There are 2 modifier realms. Using these increase the difficulty by 1, but they let you do things in a bigger area or over a time period. These are scene and time. And basically, scene is the area effect you can make something go. So if you were doing an art on fae and you threw scene, you could make it affect all fae in a room type effect. Time lets you play with time. You can suspend a cantrip. You can make it go longer. You can make the cantrip reapply itself after it ends. And that's basically what realms are. Now for arts. Arts are how you do things. Arts are the things you actually do. There are a bunch of them. I'm going to talk about 2 right now: Metamorphosis and Wayfare. Metamorphosis is about changing things. And so you can use different combinations of the metamorphosis and realms to change different things. You could use metamorphosis to change your appearance. You can use metamorphosis to change something to something else. And it all depends on how you use it and what realms. Wayfare is traditionally seen as being about travel. But you can do things in lots of different ways. The first ability of Wayfare is called Hopscotch. And what this does is it makes something jump. So you can use it with Fae on yourself and make yourself jump up really high up in the air. you can use it with prop and make a bulldozer jump into the air. You could make a rock with nature jump up into the air. Of course, you could also make all the bulldozers in an area, if you use scene, jump up into the air. That gets funny. Quicksilver is the second dot of Wayfair, and it basically makes something move faster. So if something's already moving, it moves faster. So you could use it on yourself to make you run faster. You could use it on your car with prop to make that car run faster. You could use it with scene to make your motley run faster. All the other changelings with you move faster. And that's pretty much how things are. The art determines what you can do. As a side note, the fifth dot of Wayfair is called Flicker Flash. And it's basically teleporting. I have often seen in games people use it to do such things as Flicker Flash, prop, anvil. Because that is such a changeling thing to do. Oh, look. Here's an anvil. I'm going to do Flicker Flash to make the anvil teleport above my target. I've also seen them use Metamorphosis to create the anvil to drop on the person. Which comes into the element of what's called bunks. Basically, a changeling has to do something when they are doing a cantrip. They can't just go, an anvil fell on your head. They have to do something to bridge between the dreaming and the mundane world, the autumn world. And this is called a bunk. And bunks, most of the time it's just, look, I did something. But bunks can also reduce the difficulty. It's a fairly standard procedure. How much risk, time, and or personal investment is involved in the bunk? How effectively does the bunk bring the rules and reality of the dreaming into the mundane world? And of course, how do the other players react to the bunk? No, not how do the other characters react to the bunk, but how do the other players? Because if the other players laugh out loud, gasp, or some way react favorably out of character to it, well, that's worth a bit of a bonus. Because that basically means you're able to reach out of the game, affect people in the real world, and thus make it more fun. Changeling is a interesting game many times. But that is the short of Faerie Magic. Now, the fun little detail is you always have to replace dice in your dice pool with nightmare dice. But how do you determine your dice pool? Guess what? It is not by your attributes plus skill. It is your art plus your realm. So that means if you were doing something against a Faerie Noble, if you want to use Sovereign, the art of basically telling people to do things, on a Faerie Noble, you would use your ranks in Fae, which would most likely be 2, and your ranks in Sovereign, which we'll say is 2 here. So you would be rolling 4 dice. Probably a good number of those would be replaced with nightmare dice if you've been playing for a bit. Although you can choose to replace 3 of those dice with nightmare dice to lower the difficulty of what you're trying to do. And of course, your bunk can reduce the difficulty from anywhere from 1 to 3 points. So that is the fun bit. And that is it for this discussion on Changeling. I'd like you all to come back next week. I've not yet decided my topic, but I will be here next week with a new overview video. Until then, have fun and keep gaming.